This is Chick2Chick Uncut, raw and unfiltered.
Most Americans are really worried about this. They're concerned that they're not going to have enough money for retirement, especially since pensions really don't exist anymore. And a lot of employers don't offer a 401k program. Well, there was a program that was recently enacted in Philadelphia. This program, a similar one, could go statewide, even nationwide, that could ease the financial road to retirement. My guest today, Jessica Ekman. She is the Government Affairs Director with AARP. Jessica, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I think this is a great topic. I'm excited to dive in.
It's a really important topic, and really, Americans, we're not ready for retirement. People don't have enough money. Like, what's going on?
Yeah, so we talk all the time at AARP about the retirement crisis, right? And what does that mean? So people are not saving enough for retirement. Many people don't have enough in the bank to really retire with adequate savings. And a ton of people have absolutely nothing saved for retirement, which is terrifying. And, a huge part of that is this access gap. So about half of the country doesn't have access to a way to save for retirement at work. And I always say that the at work part is the really, really key piece here, because that's sort of the magic part. That's where everything ties together. If you have access to a way to save at work, you're much more likely, 15 times more likely to save for retirement. But so many small business owners, they're not able to offer a way to save, a 401k, something like that. And so a lot of workers are sort of left out of the savings.
Yeah, and you touched on that just now, and I think that's really important. I don't think people realize, we think of big business as the big employer in this country, and that's really not the case. It's these small businesses that are really the backbone of this country. They employ most Americans, and they're not able to offer the 401k. Why can't small businesses offer their workers a 401k program?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And like you said, the small business community, it's hugely important. Like you said, it's sort of the backbone of the U.S. economy. And we do survey work all over the country talking to small business owners, and they really want to offer a way to save. So why can't they? And the reasons are threefold that we hear time and time again. It is too costly. It's far too expensive for the average small business owner. It's too confusing. There are all these moving parts. They have fiduciary liability. They have to choose the investments. It's just too much. And it's too time consuming, right? So they're just trying to keep their doors open day to day. They don't have the time to worry about this, but it is something that they really want. They see many of their employees as family, as someone that they have an obligation to help for the future, but it's just too much.
It is. It's very complicated, and it is a big thing to put on a small business owner when they're trying to run a business. So let's talk about these new programs that really could help workers and save with retirement. The first program that was recently enacted is called Philly Saves. Then there's Keystone Saves, which would be on a statewide level. And then on a federal level, we're talking about the Trump IRA. I'd like to take each one and talk about how they work and how they would benefit workers. And the most recent one was the Philly Saves that was enacted. So tell me about how Philly Saves works.
Yeah, so Philly Saves is really exciting. This just passed. It was a ballot measure. It passed the city council. It had to go through a ballot measure. It passed with overwhelming support. Don't quote me on this. I think it was somewhere around 78%. It was overwhelming support for this. And I will sort of put the Philly Saves and Keystone Saves can be talked about a little bit in tandem. The broad idea here is that these are public-private partnerships. So the state provides sort of the structure. There's a board that oversees sort of the investments, all of these in terms of selecting the investment manager, selecting the program administrator, making sure the train stays on the tracks. The private sector, they administer the program, they manage the investments. Let the private sector do what the private sector does best, right? So these are really designed to expand access for workers in a way that's cost effective. We keep costs low by having economies of scale. More people in the pot means fees are lower for savers. It's self-sustaining over time through employee fees, and it's really easy to use. So workers are automatically enrolled, and then all employers have to do is run that payroll deduction. There's no employer contribution. It's not permitted under federal law. If you ever want to, as an employer, go out and open a 401k, offer that to your employees in order to do a contribution, you are free to do that at any time. And employees can always opt out, right? You can go in, there's a default setting for everything, right? Make it as easy as possible. This is Behavioral Economics 101. Make sure there's a default. But also you can fiddle with your investments. You can change your contribution levels. You can opt out at any time. You don't have to participate. So Philly Saves, again, was just recently passed. Keystone Saves would be Pennsylvania wide. And this would be a game changer, right? So this is good. It's good on so many different levels. It's something where it's obviously good for workers, right? People can save for retirement. It's also good for business owners because they can compete and sort of attract and retain talent. It's also good for taxpayers more broadly because when people don't retire without adequate savings, there's a big cost savings to the state. We've seen our partners do research on this, and I believe off the top of my head, Pennsylvania stands to save around, I want to say $18 billion in the next 20 years alone. So this is a game changer for the state's bottom line as well.
Okay. You hit me with a lot of information, and I want to make sure that I'm understanding this properly. This is similar to a 401k, but it's not. It's an IRA, correct? This is an IRA, not a 401k. The small business owner can offer this to the employee as a way to save for retirement. The employee doesn't have to do it, but they do have that option. And when we say Philly Saves, it's because it's run by the city of Philadelphia. When we say Keystone Saves, it would be run by the state of Pennsylvania. And then on the federal level, it's called the Trump IRA, it would be run by the federal government. Did I understand everything you said properly? Did I kind of boil it down? Did that make sense? Or did I get something wrong?
I think you summarized that perfectly. And I think, too, it's important to touch on that federal piece a little bit more as well. So last month, the end of April, President Trump signed an executive order on retirement savings. And I think it's helpful to think about it in terms of what does it do and what does it not do. So what it does is it directs the Treasury Department to create a marketplace, a sort of central website where individuals, workers who don't have access to a way to save at work, they can go online, they can sort of compare and contrast different private sector IRAs, which are individual retirement accounts, and they can enroll in those. It's not run through payroll deduction. So this also sort of follows President Trump in the State of the Union in February had sort of acknowledged this. He highlighted retirement security in the State of the Union. So this was what came out of that. And the order acknowledges retirement savings as really critical. It acknowledges the crisis that's happening. And it also recognizes that there is a real need for solutions. So these are themes that AARP has emphasized for decades, right?
Yeah.
What it does not do is it does not create a federal retirement savings program. It does not replace these sort of state and city programs that are successful around the country. And it doesn't use all of those best practices that we know about, like automatic enrollment or payroll deduction, automatic escalation. So it is a really huge and important acknowledgement of the problem. And, AARP will continue to work with the administration and Congress to ensure that folks have a way to save. But right now, really states and now cities are really leading this work.
So, and this is good because a small business owner can say, hey, we have this retirement savings plan that they don't necessarily have to do the paperwork or administer, and then they can offer it to the employee as a way for them to save for retirement. Is that correct?
Yeah, and we've seen that, employers are very happy in programs that are up and running. Employers love this. They feel very good about it. They feel that this is something that they can offer, and it's extremely low impact for business owners. I mean, this is really designed to be helpful, and it's not designed to be a burden at all. You're already running payroll deductions. It's just another line item.
Right. And you said it was recently enacted in Philadelphia, and we have to say here that this is not happening yet in Pennsylvania because Keystone Saves needs legislative approval and for the governor to sign on the dotted line as well.
Yeah, so we've been working with a bipartisan group of legislators in Pennsylvania for several years. Like anything else, legislation takes time.
Yeah.
Getting a bipartisan group of folks on board takes time. But I do think that the acknowledgement by the Trump administration, the sort of support and success that we're seeing around the country, this is bipartisan. We've seen red states pass this. We've seen blue states pass this. Support from Democrats and Republicans in Congress, and support from the administration, like I said. So I think that hopefully 2027 is a year that we can get this over the finish line in Pennsylvania as well.
Some people might say, okay, if this started in Philadelphia and maybe if this goes statewide, what do we need a federal program for?
And I think that that's a good question, right? And we don't know yet what it would look like if there was a federal program. There are a couple of different proposals that are out there. One sort of indicates support for a federal type of program like this. One would be more of you have to offer something in the private sector. So we have worked with Congress, members of both sides of the aisle, to support this. We want to support any way that we can get people to save for retirement, right? Any way that we know is proven and tested. I think that having one program, if that's something that is available, we would be very supportive of that. If we have 50 programs and that's what's working, we're supportive of that. We just want to ensure that people do have a way to save, because it's something that people are incredibly anxious about, and rightfully so.
Yeah, and I think it's so important to emphasize, and I know you said it before, but this would be an option for workers. They don't have to do it, but it's there and it's available to them if they decide to do it. Is that correct?
Yeah, you're not being forced to save. If it's something where you feel that 3, 4, 5% out of your paycheck is something you can't do right now, then that's valid and that's your choice, and you are free to opt out at any time. The automatic enrollment piece is not designed to force anyone to save. It's just it's behavioral economics. It's an industry best practice. This is what we see. When I started at AARP, I was automatically enrolled in our savings plan. If I wanted to opt out, I could. Most people choose the path of least resistance, and that's where we see the most dollars saved.
Yeah, and it's good for them down the road because, now you've got money for retirement. I think we also need to talk about what type of IRA this is. And I think this confuses people a lot because there's an IRA and then there is a Roth IRA. Is this an IRA or is it a Roth IRA?
So in general, some legislation allows for both. Now, the default is always a Roth IRA. So this is a post-tax savings vehicle. You have already paid taxes on the money. You can take out the contributions penalty free. This is something where I would never want to conflate retirement savings with emergency savings, but we have seen, particularly during difficult times, people will pull out $200, $300, $400 for an emergency, and then they will continue to save, right? So this is exactly what it's intended to do. Now, your contributions for a 401k, there are penalties associated with taking that out before retirement age. This, because it's post-tax, you've already paid your taxes on it, you can take money out, your contributions, penalty-free. So it is something that can soften the blow of a financial emergency if it comes up.
Well, that's good to know as well. And I think a lot of people too might go, this is run by the government. You know, this is going to be run by the city of Philadelphia. This is going to be run by the state of Pennsylvania. This is going to be run by the Trump administration on a federal level. And I don't want the government managing my money. And that is not the case. Let's talk about that so that people understand, even though it's a government program, the government's not managing your money.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. So something to consider is that you're right. I think there can be a real distrust of government when we're talking about money and assets and managing your funds. Yes. We have seen this time and time again. So here the government, it's not managing the funds. The government's role, the state's role, the city's role in terms of Philly Saves, they sort of aggregate the businesses and individuals together. They provide this broad oversight, and then they hand it over to the private sector, which runs the back of the house. They're doing the program administration. They're running the investments, etc. Like I said, let our friends in the private sector, who have been wonderful partners on this, let them do what they do best. You might be able to perhaps get bigger returns investing in riskier things, but they are riskier. So these generally come in the sense of you are automatically enrolled in a target date fund, right? So these become more and more conservative as you get closer and closer to retirement age. And it's designed that way really to maximize returns early on and maximize security later on so that you can rely on it. And I think that you're right to really draw that distinction between who's managing your money, whose hands are in this, right? Because there are a lot of people who worry about that. And this is not the government, the state, the city handling your contributions. This goes to the private sector doing what they always do.
And the private sector will take your money and invest it so you get a bigger return on it. So when you're ready to retire, you're going to have a nice little pot there.
That's right. And this, most people who are enrolled in these programs currently, they tend to be low to moderate income workers. These people are not making, $600,000 a year. Generally speaking, you have access to a retirement savings vehicle already if you're making that kind of money. You have an investment manager, you have financial advisors. We're not talking about saving enough money so that you can retire on a yacht somewhere. We would all love
I can't? That. Come on, Jessica.
I'm not saying you can't. I'm saying maybe. But it's something where even just a small amount of money, if you can build that up over time, whether you start at 20 or you start at 50, even just a little bit can really change the perspective that you have and how your retirement looks later on. So, I get the question sometimes, like, why is AARP even involved in this, right? You advocate for the 50 plus. And it is good for people of all ages, right? So we represent the 50 plus. I don't know many 50-year-olds who can retire at that age. You do get the most sort of bang for your buck if you start to invest early on and take advantage of that compound interest. But if you can build up even a small nest egg, that's hugely beneficial, right? You can delay taking Social Security. You can have a bigger Social Security check when it comes. These are all things that can change the landscape of your retirement.
Yeah, and you know what? A little bit here, a little bit there, it all adds up. I know with 401ks, there are contribution limits, how much you can contribute. How does this work with a Roth IRA? How much money would I be able to put into this program?
Yeah, I think that the contribution limit, and I would have to look it up, I don't know off the top of my head, it's about $7,000 for an IRA. Contribution limits for 401ks are higher.
Right.
Those tend to work fine for higher income individuals. But if you are not amassing a big income to begin with, just 3, 4, 5, 6% of your
But that's not always the case. So
Exactly.
That's why we have this instead. You mentioned that contribution limit of about $7,000 or it's $7,500 somewhere. That does not mean as a worker, I have to put that much in because maybe I can't afford it. They're just saying that this is, you can put this much. This is the top contribution, but you don't have to. Is that correct? I don't want anybody to think, oh my God, I can't afford this.
Right. For a lot of people, that's going to be a significant chunk of your money. And we totally understand that. This is a limit. It is an upper limit for this. You can put in as little as you want. And generally speaking, you are automatically enrolled. The default is, anywhere between 5 to 8%. And there's automatic escalation. So maybe annually it goes up 1%. You are always free to change that. If you think that there is, you should be contributing more or you need to contribute less for a year or 2 years or 6 months, you're free to do that at any time. This is just, again, it is sort of a best practice. You automatically enroll people and you figure out all the sort of rough best practices for everybody. And then they can tweak from there if they want.
Yeah, whatever fits your budget. You mentioned that AARP, you folks really represent people over the age of 50, but who are you targeting with these programs? The Philly Saves, the Keystone Saves. Is there a specific group or is it just for everybody, every age group?
And that's such an important question. This is for everybody. So, of course, like I said, if you start to save early, that compound interest is huge and can make a dramatic difference in your sort of dollars saved over time. But again, if you're 50, 60, you might have quite a few working years left. And it's important to save what you can when you can. Now, I know that we do survey work, like I mentioned, with small business owners. We also do it with registered voters. And people of all ages, I think, are really interested in this. I think that even younger folks, they have expressed to us a desire to save while simultaneously having a hard time doing so because of this access gap, right? So when very few people around you have that sort of automatically baked into their jobs and their paychecks, it sort of becomes the norm not to save for retirement. And I think that that's also a problem.
Well, and if you're offered something and a way to do it, you're probably more inclined to say, yeah, I want to do it when it's not offered, and then you just don't think about it.
Absolutely.
What do you say to people who say, you know what, I'm going to get Social Security. I'm not worried about this. I'm going to spend all my money now and I'm not going to save and I'm just going to rely on Social Security. What would you say to them?
Yeah, I think, again, I work for AARP. We love Social Security. We think Social Security is critically important. We fight very hard every day to ensure that you have your Social Security benefits. It was not intended to be your only source of income in retirement. We talked earlier about that three-legged stool, right? So it's Social Security, it's pensions, and it's private savings. And pensions are very difficult to come across these days. Social Security will be there. But private savings is where you can at least try to sort of make up the difference. And I think it's important that people do try because we see far too many people relying on just Social Security, and it's just not enough. The healthcare system is expensive. Health emergencies and issues can come up and be a dramatic financial impact on you and your family. And so we want to ensure that people are thinking long term.
So I think the one group, though, that doesn't tend to think long term, you have your 20-year-olds and in some cases 30-year-olds, they're not thinking about retirement. And I'm hearing things like, oh, I'm not going to put my money into that program. I can do better on my own. I can invest in cryptocurrency and I'm going to make a whole lot more money than putting my money into an IRA or a 401k. What would you say to a 20-year-old or a 30-year-old? Because that's the mindset.
Mhm.
They think they can do better on their own. They think they can make a higher rate of return on their own. And then they don't want other people managing their money. They want to manage their own money. So what would you say to them and how would you try to convince them that this program is good for them?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm a very risk averse person naturally. That is just my temperament. And when I hear something like that, I think easy come, easy go, right? You can make these higher returns. You can get higher returns on a riskier investment, like I mentioned earlier. But they're riskier for a reason, and you can lose that. So these sort of target date funds, these boring target date funds, these boring investments, those are the things that will be your safety net in retirement. You do not want to have an exciting financial portfolio when you're about to retire. You want it to be steady. You want it to be something that you can be reliant on.
And you want it to be a sure thing.
You want it to be a sure thing, right? You do want to be able to sleep at night thinking about your retirement. And I think, in that survey work where we do talk to registered voters, so we usually do about 18 to 64 age range when we're doing these registered voter surveys. And people of all ages are very interested in this. They do see it. I think, again, it might be part of a cultural norm where fewer and fewer people are able to save. Mm-hmm. And so it becomes less and less of a sort of a cultural norm. I think that's a problem. And I think that, when you see the enrollment in the programs that are up and running, people of all ages are staying in, right? This is something where people know that they're now being enrolled in these programs. They're having money deducted from their paychecks, and they continue to do so because they see the long-term benefit in it. But I think the more we talk to people about it, the more valuable it is.
Well, it is kind of confusing. It is a little confusing. And I think if we talk about it and we explain it in the very simplest of terms, maybe it's easier for people to digest. Like you mentioned target date funds. And I know what you mean by that, but why don't you explain a little bit more what a target date fund is and what that means?
Yeah, so, when you're enrolled in a target date fund, this is it's a portfolio of investments. And I'm not an investment manager, so I don't claim to be an expert, but it selects a rough retirement age for you based on your current age and how many years out you are. And it becomes more and more conservative as you get closer in time to that retirement age. So it's a little bit riskier earlier on. You can get higher returns, and it becomes more and more of, like what you said earlier, a sure thing later on, which is exactly what you're looking for in a retirement portfolio.
Yeah. So it is a fund that targets your potential retirement date, and it picks investments based on that date. I know this issue is really important to AARP. I know you folks are really pushing this and you're trying to get the information out. We just talked about a whole lot of stuff here. If people want more information, do you have a resource, a website? Where should people go to get more information about these programs?
Yes, that's a great question. So if you're looking for more information about this, go to aarp.org and then search for State Retirement Resource Center. That will be something where you can look at a lot of information, a lot of research that we have, and also what's going on around the country. I should mention that currently there are 21 states that have enacted this kind of program, and there's more than $3 billion saved already.
Awesome. What are your final thoughts as we round out and as we wrap up this podcast? Give me some final thoughts here.
I mean, I think what's really encouraging is we're no longer debating whether workers need access. That debate is long gone now. We are seeing bipartisan support states and cities are coming together and really building these solutions to great success, to $3 billion saved success. And that kind of momentum really matters. I'm very, very hopeful that we can continue to see this kind of growth and build real retirement security for people that need it.
Yeah, just give workers that option. Jessica, great information, lots of information here. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast and explaining these programs.
Great. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Again, Philly Saves recently enacted, Keystone Saves. We would need legislation for that to happen. There seems to be bipartisan support. And then on a federal level, there's talk about the Trump IRA. Remember, this is just an option for workers to put away money for retirement. Nobody's going to force you to do it, but it's just an option and another way for you to save. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening to this podcast. As always, head over to our YouTube channel, like and subscribe to Chick2Chick USA. That way, every time we come out with a new podcast episode, you will get an alert on your phone. Thanks again. Great information for workers who might be worried about retirement and whether you're going to have enough money. There's a program here. There's talk of enacting these programs to help lessen the stress for you. Thanks again, and I hope you have a great day.